Welcome to Beyond the Veil Australia podcast, where history, mystery, and the unexplained collide. From eerie encounters to cryptid lore, from channeled messages to scientific investigations, we're lifting the veil and stepping into the unknown. I'm Heather, your guide through the shadows, and together we'll unravel paranormal phenomena, strange synchronicities, and the mysteries that refuse to be ignored. Whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or somewhere in between, this space is for you. Fasten your seatbelt, expand your thinking, and cross the threshold beyond the veil. Welcome to Beyond the Veil Australia's very first episode of our podcast. Today's episode is a part one for a three-part series. I'm really excited about this. This is something that I have been trying to finesse for at least a few days of really going back and refining, and then coming back and probably overthinking it. So I've probably done a great job getting my content together. I think I'm just an overthinker. So welcome. Hello to everybody that's watching on YouTube. You can probably see me. I am in my very special Halloween pumpkin jumper. It is just one of my favorite jumpers, and I thought, what better way to kick off the very first episode with the pumpkin jumper. So, today's episode, part one, is called You've Got to Be Joking: The History, Myths, and Sightings of UFOs. UFOs, government cover-ups, conspiracies so wild they sound like sci-fi, except they're not. Welcome to today's part one episode, You've Got to Be Joking: The History, Myths, and Sightings of UFOs and UAPs, where we separate fact from fiction, dive into the absurd, and question everything we think we know. Again, I'm Heather, and in this episode, we're peeling back the layers of high strangeness, breaking down the history, the hoaxes, and the moments that make even skeptics do a double take. Because when it comes to UFOs, the truth is stranger than fiction. So buckle up, this is going to be a wild ride. I saw something hovering over my car, then it vanished. How many stories like this have we dismissed? Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a misidentified aircraft? Or was it something bigger? Across centuries, unexplained aerial phenomena have sparked wonder, fear, and intrigue. From ancient texts to modern sightings, humanity has documented encounters that just defy explanation. But are we looking in the right places for answers? Or have the biggest UFO secrets been right in front of us all along? This episode, we examine the history, myths, and shocking sightings that have shaped our understanding of UFOs. And amidst the research, a message surfaced. A channeled warning that may hold the key to disclosure. Before radar, satellites, and Pentagon briefings, the skies were still full of mysteries. But how far back do UFO encounters really go? Were ancient civilizations recording unexplained aerial phenomena? Or were they just seeing what they wanted to see? Today we peel back the layers of time, diving into the cryptic cave paintings, medieval chronicles, and the eerie similarities between ancient texts and modern UFO reports. This quote is from a Roman historian in 76 AD. "Fiery shields cross the sky, an omen of things to come." Pretty hard-hitting quote. I really liked that one. Roman texts, Egyptian glyphs, and even biblical accounts describe glowing discs, mysterious flying objects, and encounters that seemed to defy logic. Some believe these were early recordings of extraterrestrial visits, but others argue that they were nothing more than a myth, a metaphor, or a misunderstood celestial event. So, how many times have we heard that? So, let's just think back to some of the more ancient civilizations at the time. So, if we take the Thule papyrus, I feel like I said that completely wrong, but papyrus, I think it is. For example, this is an Egyptian document from roughly the 15th century BCE. It allegedly describes fire-like discs hovering above Pharaoh Tutmosis III's kingdom. Again, I probably said that wrong. It's fine, I'm trying. And this was witnessed by royal scribes who reported their movements in the sky. These objects were said to be brighter than the sun and appearing in great numbers before suddenly vanishing towards the southern areas. Some call it one of history's first recorded UFO sightings. Again, while others argue that the document's authenticity is questionable because, conveniently, no original papyrus has ever been found. The only known version comes from a supposed transcription by an Italian Egyptologist, Boris Derashavilts. Again, I've probably butchered that completely. I'm very sorry. In the 1950s. And leading skeptics to dismiss it as a hoax or a misinterpretation of celestial events like meteors or atmospheric phenomenon. There's India's Mahabharata, written around 400 BCE. And this sacred text describes Vimanahas, flying chariots, I suppose is what they're called, by celestial beings, supposedly capable of interstellar travel. The Pushpaka Vimana, for instance, was said to be self-propelled, able to move at will, and large enough to carry multiple passengers. Some descriptions even suggest advanced weaponry, including energy beams and aerial combat. So, were these poetic metaphors, or were they actually detailed accounts of something far more advanced than we're actually willing to admit? While many scholars interpret the Vimanas as a symbolic representation of divine power, again, others argue that it could be distorted records of lost technology or encounters with something beyond human understanding. And I suppose if we fast forward to the book of Ezekiel, and we find perhaps one of the most puzzling descriptions, it's essentially a wheel within a wheel, descending from the heavens in flashing fire. Ezekiel's vision includes 4 living creatures, each with multiple faces, accompanied by a structure that moved in all directions without actually turning. Which is quite interesting because when we look back at, apart from the fact that I've butchered some of the names in the most recent ancient ones, if we put that aside, what's common so far is that they've all been described as being like fire. Not to say that we don't get lots of different descriptions, but it's interesting that just a lot of the earlier texts were kind of describing it as like a ball of fire or a wheel of fire. But even with the book of Ezekiel, it's sort of kind of flashing fire, but with lots of other things within it. And it's like moving without actually turning. So that's kind of fascinating. But some religious scholars will interpret this as a divine chariot, a representation of God's presence. Others, however, will see an eerie parallel to modern spacecraft descriptions. So this then is fueling theories that Ezekiel may have actually witnessed an advanced flying machine. The ancient astronaut theory, popularized by Erich von Däniken, I'm so sorry, I'm really butchering these, suggests that Ezekiel's account could be a first-hand description of extraterrestrial technology. But ancient civilizations weren't the only ones recording strange aerial phenomena. Fast forward to Renaissance, where we find UFO-like anomalies in religious paintings, glowing celestial objects depicted alongside figures of Christ and the Virgin Mary. Some art historians argue these were symbolic representations of divine presence, while others suggest they could be coded depictions of unexplained aerial sightings. So that's kind of fascinating that once again, sort of moving into another area is that we're looking at paintings within churches and things like that, where they're kind of saying, this is artwork, but when we look back on it, historians and things like that are sort of saying, well, these are more like spiritual representations. It's not necessarily artwork. And then you'll have others that are kind of saying, well, it's a spiritual representation of what they understood this phenomena to be. So it's kind of interesting, actually, how we're looking at, multiple things from, different civilizations and different timelines, and the fact that the phenomena was happening, it's just that we couldn't really make sense of it. We didn't have a real point of reference for what it was. It's kind of cool that it's the way that this is being recorded is predominantly through pictures and paintings. It's not necessarily through words. So that's one thing I find really quite cool and quite fascinating about the early recorded sightings. Yes, I know there'll be people that will argue and go, they're not recorded sightings. Well, they had to have come from somewhere. You can't just have a painting just take place without it being inspired from something. I've got friends that are artists, and a lot of their work is drawn from their own personal experience of something, and that's what influences the artwork. So what's to say that in this particular case, it might be a symbolic representation of a divine presence, but it could also be inspired by, well, this is what I saw and this is the only way I can make sense of it, so I'm recording it. It's a bit different now. We've got phones and cameras and laptops and everything. So yeah, that's kind of cool, actually. I really found that interesting. But sort of moving along a little bit, one of the most famous examples of the baptism of Christ, and this is approximately the 15th century, as an example, by Pier della Francesca, which features a mysterious disc hovering in the sky. Another is the miracle of the snow, and I'm going to butcher his name again, and I'm very sorry, but I think it's Marcelino de Panica, where a lenticular cloud formations essentially resemble a fleet of flying saucers. So some researchers believe these paintings reflect celestial visions, while others tend to speculate they could be artistic interpretations of real aerial phenomena witnessed at the time. So there's a little bit of research that just kind of backed up what I just said and made up off the top of my head. Yeah, that's fascinating. Then there are the European, I guess they were classed as like a flying shield, and these are the European flying shield accounts. So soldiers were describing fiery discs. Once again, we're coming back to the fire, there's something there. They were describing fiery discs hovering over battlefields. Were these omens of war or hallucinations that were brought on by stress or something else entirely? Roman historians like Livy and Plutarch recorded sightings of shiny round shields of polished bronze moving across the sky, sometimes accompanied by mysterious humanoid figures dressed in white. In 217 BC, that's a long time ago, witnesses in Rome reported seeing a group of shiny round shields moving across the sky. In 74 BC, thousands of soldiers witnessed a large flaming object of what could be described as molten silver crash land between two armies on a Roman battlefield in Turkey. The object was shaped like a large storage jar with a pointed bottom, and eerily similar to modern descriptions of unidentified aerial craft. So that's pretty cool. Again, we're kind of coming back to like this fiery sort of thing going on. And you know what I find really funny is, just to kind of slightly get off topic, there is a show that I absolutely love to watch. It's been on for a while, but I'm sure most of you that are listening are probably extraordinarily familiar with Ozzy Osbourne, one of the most wonderful, amazing, talented artists of his time. I am a very big fan of Ozzy and Black Sabbath, by the way, just putting it out there. But I really love the Osbournes. I think they're great. I think they're just really cool, kind of just a really good representation of just not giving a fuck, right? I just love it. And there was a show that was hosted by their son, Jack Osbourne. And again, I love Jack Osbourne. I love watching his paranormal work. I find listening to his podcast as well, there's some really great topics that come up for discussion, and he's really invested in it. So I just love it. But this particular show is called The Osbournes Want to Believe, and it's essentially where Jack Osbourne is sitting down with Sharon and Ozzy, and he's trying to make believers out of them, of paranormal and supernatural events. So what they kind of do is Jack will present a series of short video clips of different paranormal phenomena, so across UFOs to cryptids, ghostly figures, etc. And basically, he has a scale which is called the Woogie Boogie scale, and it's 10 being the most frightening thing and 0 being nothing. And it's like, how Woogie Boogie is this? And I love it because it's really funny when there's something to do with a UFO or a UAP clip that Jack is showing them, depending on what it was. Jack would say, "Oh, what do you think this is? What you've got any thoughts, Dad?" And Ozzy would just go, "Ball lightning." And I just loved it because Jack would be like, "Well, ball lightning, it can't be, that doesn't last for as long as this clip is, And Ozzy would be like, "No, it's ball lightning." And it just used to make me laugh. And I just loved it because he was just so quick to jump in there and always call it ball lightning. And, as the series went on and different clips came up, you could really see Ozzy opening his mind to it being maybe something a little bit more than ball lightning. So, it's quite interesting that a lot of these earlier descriptions of what a UFO actually was or classed as, were kind of described as having some form of a fiery or fire-like description, right? So like it cracks me up a little bit that, this is how they were recorded way back when. And, something like Ozzy on a show in modern times says, "Oh, it's ball lightning." And, even today, my husband, again, he's not a super fan of the paranormal. He's quite the opposite. But he's watched that a few times with me and he just finds it really funny. So sometimes when something strange might happen at home, it could be completely non-paranormal. It might just be something just really random. We will usually look at each other and say, "It's ball lightning." And go on our merry way. So I thought that was really cool. And yes, we're slightly going off topic, but I really kind of wanted to, put in something that I thought was really cool, that somebody was describing it as ball lightning, and a lot of the early depictions were that they were fiery and and shaped like a ball or a disc or something. It just brought ball lightning to mind. So I just wanted to share that because I'm sure there'll be people that are listening that have seen this show before and probably really enjoyed it, and others that may have watched it and been like, what are we watching? But it's got the Osbournes, so cool. Yeah. So moving into a little bit more in terms of around ancient phenomena, this is actually coming a little bit closer to home for me as somebody that lives in Australia. Indigenous Australian sky law tells of beings descending from the heavens, some linked in light phenomena witnessed by elders. These stories passed down through generations, described as celestial visitors, unexplained lights, and encounters that defy conventional explanation. In some First Nations traditions, the sky beings are said to have come from the stars, bringing knowledge and wisdom. Some accounts describe glowing orbs appearing in the night sky, moving in ways that defy natural explanation. In Central Australia, Walpurgis residents have reported UFO sightings that align with traditional cosmological themes, blending modern extraterrestrial narratives with ancient spiritual beliefs. Even in modern times, skepticism has shaped how UFO encounters are handled. In the 1950s, the Royal Australian Air Force, or if you hear me refer to them as RAF, that's what it is, investigated UFO reports, classifying most as weather anomalies. Yet, strangely, some cases were mysteriously omitted from official records. Was this a case of bureaucratic oversight or deliberate suppression? Pretty interesting. I just wanted to quickly jump back into the First Nations storytelling there, but it is interesting. I know that we were learning this through First Nations people that live on the lands of Australia and are the traditional custodians, with their storytelling about them being star beings or sky beings that come from the stars. From what I understand, there's a lot that's very similar with the First Nations people of the Americas. So in the Northern American area where we've got First Nations people also describing what they, I suppose in modern times would call a UFO sighting, but they're star beings and that they're bringing wisdom and knowledge down with them. So I found that really kind of cool that it wasn't just in one First Nations culture that we've heard this before. We've heard it in several. And both First Nations cultures I find really fascinating, really interesting. And I really, on a spiritual level, I kind of connect a lot with the cultures. I find this, it could be cultural music or something like that. I can feel it sort of all the way through my body, and it's not just like feeling it physically. It's like on a spiritual level, you feel calm and at home, and it's a really bizarre kind of feeling to try and describe, but there's just something very intriguing, very healing, and very connecting about First Nations cultures. And I do my best to try and research a lot about First Nations cultures across the world, because I find that we can really learn so much from particularly ancient cultures. And in Australia, we have the longest living culture in the world with First Nations people who are the traditional custodians of the land of Australia. I find lots of different variations of the culture so beautiful, and I really enjoy learning about it, and I feel very spiritually connected to it. So I just wanted to sort of throw that out there, that there is a lot of similarities between different First Nations cultures around the world, and it's really kind of cool to see, not just from ancient civilizations of the Egyptians or the Romans or anything like that. I think it's really cool to see that it's been seen everywhere. It's not a new phenomena. So yeah, kind of cool. But I guess we should probably press on a little bit. One of the most well-documented incidents occurred in 1958 when two RAF Lincoln bombers encountered luminous objects moving at incredible speeds over Western Australia. The sighting was officially recorded as a UFO encounter, yet details remain scarce. By the 1970s, UFO sightings had become so frequent that the RAF provided questionnaires to the public, essentially as summarising reports. But they were never fully disclosing their findings, which is, it's interesting. I don't necessarily find it surprising, particularly for the time. But yeah, interesting that there's reports going out, but a lot of it's being omitted. So again, not much has changed. Throughout history, cultures interpreted what they saw based on their understanding of the world, which is a really cool way to word that. But were they truly witnessing something that was beyond their time, or were they simply shaping cosmic events into myths and legends? Interesting kind of thought process there, I guess. One thing is for certain, though, these stories that are etched into history and have endured centuries, whether dismissed as legend or embraced as proof of something greater, they continue to fuel the biggest question of all. Have we always had visitors, or have we always just needed something to believe in? What are your thoughts on that? Apart from some of my rambling here and there, what do you think about that? I'd love to hear what you think about that. So leave a comment in the comment section or jump onto any of our social media pages and let me know what you think. So we're up to the next segment, the sightings that shocked the world. For centuries, people have looked to the skies and seen things they couldn't explain. But for some sightings, they do stand out. Events so shocking, so undeniable, that they've shaped the way we think about UFOs forever. Were these encounters genuine proof of extraterrestrial visitors? Or were they carefully orchestrated distractions designed to steer public perception? That's a really interesting kind of thought process right there. I think in 2025, we could probably all agree that it probably was designed to steer public perception a little bit based on what my thinking is. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have proof of that necessarily. Well, I might a little bit, but I do find that it's quite interesting that there's a particular narrative that's coming along with this. So we're going to kind of dive into some famous global UFO sightings. Let's start with one that changed everything. You know it, Roswell in 1947. A rancher named Mac Brazel discovers strange debris scattered across his land in Corona, New Mexico. The military steps in, first claiming they've recovered a flying disc, and then quickly retracting the statement, insisting that it was just a weather balloon. But decades later, witnesses, including military personnel, have come forward, claiming that they saw alien bodies and advanced technologies. In 1978, retired Air Force officer Jesse Marcel revealed that the weather balloon story had been a cover-up, fueling speculation that debris was of extraterrestrial origin. Over time, the Roswell narrative expanded. Claims of multiple crash sites, alien autopsies, and reverse-engineered technology became a part of the lore. The US Air Force later released reports stating the wreckage was from Project Mogul, a classified program designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. But despite official explanations, Roswell remains one of the most famous UFO incidents in history, a case that refuses to fade into obscurity. That's a pretty prominent one, and I find it really interesting that given the time, I understand it was the 40s and we'd just come out of World War II, and there was growing tensions between different countries at that point in time. So I can understand that maybe what they did find was certainly more than what we're used to, and there's no point of reference for that. But I guess when you think about the time, of course they're going to want to try and put it off as something else to not alarm the world or the population in case it was, I guess, enemy technology coming from one country to another to create some form of destruction or control or something. So I can sort of understand to a degree maybe there was a reason why things weren't released at the time. But I do find it interesting that where we are now, I find it really interesting that we still haven't really had much more disclosure or more information about Roswell since then. I know there's definitely more coming out, but it really has been a very slow kind of burn into finding out more. Then there's the Phoenix Lights of 1997, one of the largest mass UFO sightings in modern history. Thousands of people across Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico had reported seeing a massive V-shaped formation of glowing lights hovering silently over the city. Witnesses described the craft as larger than multiple football fields, moving with an eerie precision. The military later claimed that the lights were flares from a training exercise. But eyewitnesses, also including Arizona Governor Fife Symington, described something otherworldly. Symington initially dismissed the event publicly, but years later admitted he had seen the craft himself, calling it unlike anything I've ever seen. To this day, no official explanation has fully accounted for what was seen that night. And then there's another one that's really cool. There's Westall 1966. This is Australia's most famous UFO encounter. Over 200 students and teachers in Melbourne, this is my home state obviously, had witnessed a metallic craft hovering over their school before military response teams arrived. Witnesses claimed they were told to stay silent, and some even recall uniformed men confiscating the evidence. The object was described as a silver grey, round, and slightly domed, moving erratically before disappearing. Some students reported seeing multiple aircraft pursuing the UFO, while others claimed to have found circular patches of flattened grass where the craft had actually landed. Theories range from experimental military technology to extraterrestrial visitation. But one thing remains really clear. Westall is one of the most compelling mass sightings in history. And that one's really fascinating. It's interesting, and slight disclosure here, but on the train line that runs from my local area into the city of Melbourne, that particular line actually stops in Westall. And when I've had to go into the city for training with my paid job, every time I would look up and we would be arriving at the Westall train station, I couldn't help but think, oh my God, is this that place where they had that UFO sighting like way back when? And, the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh my God, It really is. Like it's kind of cool that, I not that I get the train that often, but when I do, it's kind of fun to go through the area where there was such a historical event in terms of a mass UFO sighting. I found that particular case really, really interesting to learn about over thousands of hours of documentaries that I've watched about it. But also when I was researching it a bit more for this episode, it really sparked something that I kind of went, oh my God, there's just something really cool about this. And I don't know if it's because it's it's in my home state, but it's also, you know, somewhat more local than I realized to where my area is. But yeah, it's one that's really fascinated me. So yeah, I think it's a really cool, I don't even want to use the word story. I just, yeah, it's a really interesting kind of encounter that happened. And, I think because, in Australia, we don't normally hear so much about our own kind of sightings and things like this. So when you sort of do come across one that's quite renowned and, you know, something that happened and it was a mass sighting, it's really interesting. It really sparks the thought process and the curiosity and that willingness to want to learn more about it. So, yeah, there's a little fun fact that Westall is actually on the train line that I will get if I have to go into Melbourne for my work. So there's a fun fact for everyone. But sort of moving on into more of Australia's unexplained encounters, I found this really fascinating because, again, we don't get to see much in depth with some of the Australian encounters. So I was really excited to be able to learn a little bit more about some of the Aussie ones that have happened across the decades. So this one is about the Frederick Valentich disappearance, and this is Australia's unsettling UFO mystery. Australia has its own share of UFO mysteries, and some of them even more unsettling than Roswell. Take the Frederick Valentich disappearance of 1978. A young pilot flying over Bass Strait reports seeing a strange craft hovering above him. His last transmission? It's not an aircraft. Moments later, his plane vanishes without a trace. No wreckage. No body. Just a chilling radio recording of decades of speculation. What did Valentich see? On the evening of October 21, 1978, 20-year-old Frederick Valentich was piloting a Cessna 182L light aircraft en route from Moorabbin Airport to King Island. At 7:06 p.m, he made radio contact with Melbourne's flight service, asking if there were any aircraft in his vicinity. The response? No known traffic. But Valentich insisted he was seeing something. He described the craft as shiny, metallic, and moving quite erratically. It had 4 bright lights, and at one point, it hovered above him before vanishing and reappearing. His final transmission included a metallic scraping sound, leading some to believe his aircraft was interfered with or taken. Then there was silence. Valentich and his plane were never seen again. What happened to Valentich? The disappearance triggered one of Australia's largest aviation investigations, led by the Department of Transport. Despite extensive searches, no wreckage was ever found. Investigators considered multiple theories. Pilot disorientation. Did Valentich become confused? Some officials speculated that Valentich may have become disorientated, making his own aircraft's reflection in the water for a UFO. Others suggested he was flying upside down and seeing lights from a nearby island. seems a little bit pathetic to me. That just seems like the biggest load of crap I've ever heard of. Could he have mistaken his own aircraft's reflection? I'm sorry, but this gentleman was 20 years old. I'm pretty certain he would have had very good vision. And how could you mistake your own aircraft's reflection? In what? What are you reflecting from? And even if you're upside down, how would that make any difference between being upside down or upright, seeing a reflection of lights from a nearby island? It just doesn't make sense. It's the most preposterous thing I've ever heard. And even when I was researching this, some of these theories came out and I just was scratching my head in wonder, like, are these guys for like fucking real? Like, that has got to be the dumbest response I've ever heard. It almost goes back to that Roswell incident where, they were denying it and that it was a weather balloon. And it's just so absurd to think that people are dumb enough to believe those kind of theories. I just don't think that the population's that stupid. I really don't. Particularly when it's something like that where a 20-year-old gentleman goes missing in his aeroplane. It's just odd. And with his last transmission about it not being an aircraft, it's just, that whole pilot disorientation, I'm completely discounting. I don't think that's definitely not, it's definitely not an option for me. Was the next one mechanical failure? Did his plane malfunction? While Valentich reported engine trouble, there was no distress signal that was sent. His radio transmission remained calm, and making mechanical failure extraordinarily unlikely. And there really wasn't enough information to say that there was any kind of mechanical failure. Yes, there was that scraping noise from whatever this craft was, either hitting or taking or something happening with his plane and this unknown aircraft. But again, that's not enough to say that it was a complete malfunction. Alien abduction. Was Valentich taken? Valentich was a firm believer in UFOs, and just days before his disappearance, he told his girlfriend he was worried about being attacked by extraterrestrials. Some theorists believe in his final transmission, "It's not an aircraft," suggests an encounter beyond conventional aviation. Of course, it fits that category. Again, we don't have a huge amount of evidence, but we've got more evidence of it being an alien abduction than we do about him flying upside down. So I'm willing to take those odds. The other interesting thing was that there was eyewitness reports. Did others see the UFO? On the night of the disappearance, multiple witnesses reported seeing strange green lights in the sky over Bass Strait. Some claimed that they saw a fast-moving object, while others described a disc-shaped craft hovering over the water. Despite decades of speculation, the case remains sadly unsolved. There's no wreckage. There's no body. Just a radio transmission that still haunts investigators today. So I'm going to pose the question, what do you think? Was Valentich disorientated? Was he abducted? Or was he caught in something far beyond our understanding? Let me know in the comments or on social media what you think about that one. Moving on to the next one, which is Pine Gap, Australia's Area 51. Pine Gap, Australia's most secretive military base. Officially, it's a joint US-Australian intelligence facility, but eyewitnesses claim to have seen unidentified craft near the site, some moving in ways that defy conventional physics. Pine Gap has long been rumoured to house advanced surveillance technology, but some believe it's also involved in extraterrestrial research. Reports of strange lights, hovering objects, and sudden disappearances have fueled speculation that Pine Gap is Australia's Area 51, a place where classified experiments and UFO-related operations take place far from public scrutiny. What's really happening at Pine Gap? For decades, researchers and whistleblowers have attempted to uncover the truth about Pine Gap. Some claim it's a global intelligence hub, while others believe it's a testing ground for advanced aerospace technology, possibly even reverse-engineered extraterrestrial craft. One of the most well-known investigators, Bill Chalker, has explored Australia's military and government role in UFO research. His findings suggest that Pine Gap may be more than just a surveillance facility. It could be a key player in global UFO secrecy. Then there's Keith Basterfield, another leading Australian UFO researcher who has compiled physical trace cases, abduction reports, and military involvement in UFO phenomena. His work has highlighted classified operations that may be linked to extraterrestrial technology. Over the years, multiple eyewitnesses have reported strange aerial phenomena near Pine Gap. Some describe silent, disc-shaped craft, while others claim to have seen bright lights hovering over the facility before vanishing instantly. One of the most chilling accounts came from former employees who claim that Pine Gap houses underground facilities, possibly linked to classified aerospace projects. Some whistleblowers suggest that the base is monitoring extraterrestrial activity or even conducting experiments beyond conventional science. So what do you think? Is Pine Gap just a surveillance hub? Or is it Australia's hidden gateway to UFO research? Now, this particular case is one that has really fascinated me. The Rosedale UFO incident. Now, Rosedale is a small country town in part of the eastern Gippsland area of Victoria. And why I'm quite intrigued by this case is that Bill Chalker had actually worked on this one. And my sister lives in that area, and so I find it really kind of cool that an encounter had happened again in an area that's local to where my sister lives. Australia has had its fair share of UFO encounters, but few are as baffling, well documented, and physically verified as the Rosedale UFO incident in eastern Gippsland, Victoria. It was the early hours of September 30, 1980, when farm worker George Blackwell was jolted awake by the sound of cattle in distress. The animals were bellowing, kicking up dust and rolling their eyes in panic. Something was terribly wrong. Blackwell rushed outside, still in his night attire, and he climbed onto a wooden rail to get a better view. That's when he saw it. A disc-shaped object hovering 10 to 15 feet above the ground, with a row of lights like portholes. It moved silently, gliding between a shed and a tree before stopping above a water tank. And then a blinding flash of light knocked Blackwell to the ground. When he regained his senses, the object was gone, but the physical evidence remained. The next morning, investigators arrived at the White Acres cattle property where Blackwell had witnessed the event. And what they found was undeniable. A large circular burn mark scorched into the paddock. A water tank, which the UFO had hovered above, was found contorted and completely empty. Its contents mysteriously vanished overnight. Multiple witnesses reported seeing strange lights in the sky that same night. And just a year later, at Bryalong, another identical UFO sighting had actually occurred. And again, with missing water and burn marks left behind. The Rosedale UFO incident remains one of Australia's most compelling and hard to dismiss cases. It's featured in global UFO rankings and studied by investigators worldwide. Bill Chalker was the leading Australian UFO researcher and investigator, alongside Gary Little and Keith Basterfield. Their findings were published in UFO Research Australia, detailing the physical evidence, eyewitness accounts, and possible explanations. Chalker's team had examined the burn marks, the missing water, and the electromagnetic disturbances that were reported in the area. They ruled out natural causes, stating that the evidence did not match conventional explanations. The case gained international attention, appearing in UFO documentaries, research papers, and global rankings as one of the top 10 UFO cases worldwide. Could this one be one of Australia's most incredible UFO encounters? Or is there another explanation waiting to be uncovered? Really, really cool. This is just a really small, brief snapshot of the Rosedale incident. Quick shout out. I learnt more about this case only fairly recently, and it was through another Australian content creator who's I believe he's based in South Australia, but his name is called the UFOzzie. So if you are interested more so in UFOs and more fascinating sort of deeper looks at it, definitely go and check it out. He actually interviewed Bill Chalker, and this is where we really got to learn more about Rosedale and the incident that occurred. And it's really, really interesting, and it's quite spooky in a way too. I just found it so incredible that something like this had happened in Australia, and to be able to sort of find more information through different Australian content creators and really learning more in depth about it has just really, really opened up this rabbit hole that I'm just like, holy shit, I'm in the rabbit hole and I don't think I'm getting out. But if you haven't, go and check out the UFOzzie on YouTube. He's got a really great story regarding his grandfather. So I really recommend, if you love the UFO stuff, head over and check him out on YouTube. So moving on to something a little bit more interesting. Among researching all of these reports, something had happened to me, something unexpected. During my research and a little bit of rehearsal time, I experienced something that felt beyond explanation. Now, for those that may not be aware as yet, I refer to myself as a sensitive or a psychic medium in development, and this is a skill that I've probably, upon reflection, been able to access all my life. I think there were certain parts of my life where I really just didn't want it to be there, and so I would sort of try and shut it off and pretend it wasn't. But over the last probably 5 years, I've really started tapping back into that ability, and I've certainly noticed in the last maybe 18 months, I've been getting a lot more information and I've been able to really connect deeper. So with that, I channeled a message. I also had a slight vision of this being that communicated with me. I saw a being, appeared somewhat female or gave female energy, white grey in appearance, and it was like she was staring at me through what I can only describe as like a professional headshot photo. And then I received a message. There is a full disclosure coming very soon. It's not what you think it is. Leadership are creating a fear-based narrative. It will all make sense soon. Whew, woogie boogie scale for that one, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. It was a really interesting experience, and I'm kind of just had like a little goosebumps moment just now, but it really, I think at the time I couldn't quite comprehend what the message was and what it was that I was seeing, but I was trying to sort of just be present and try and channel what it was. And I think, over the days following, there was obviously more that had come from that. So this was just sort of the first part of this communication. And I found it, a few days later, that message started to really sink in a little bit, and I was able to kind of take it in a bit more and kind of experience that and kind of go, oh my God, like I saw a vision and I felt this presence and they spoke to me and they were not harmful. They were not frightening. They were just trying to share something with me. And it was interesting because I remember not long before I channeled that message, I've seen this footage so much. This particular footage, which is talking about some footage of military personnel in the US who had captured visuals on their cameras on their jets. I can't remember what they're called specifically, but those things that they lock onto a target. Yeah, one of them. And I'd seen this footage so much in documentaries. I'd heard it through podcasts. But the difference was this time when it came up, I was just watching it purely for what it was. It wasn't in a documentary or a podcast where there would be a section that you would see or hear and then a cut to whoever was talking and then a return. It was just a pure moment of watching that video and just watching it as if it was the raw thing happening at the time. And it really took me by surprise that I thought, I've seen this footage so much. Why is it that this feels so, not scary, but just like fascinating, mind-blowing, and just purely like, holy shit, they caught something. They saw something. It's there. I really was able to properly appreciate that footage for what it truly was and not get distracted by it being in a podcast or in a documentary. So there's part of a message. Well, that particular message was what came through at that time. I have received other messages, and all will be revealed as we move along. So, with that, if disclosure is coming, but fear is being manufactured, what's the end game? Are we being steered towards a controlled narrative? In our next segment, we're going to explore the forces shaping UFO disclosure and whether the truth is being revealed or rewritten. For decades, UFO sightings have sparked debate between scientists, skeptics, and believers. Are these encounters proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, or are they simply misidentified natural phenomena, classified technology, or even deliberate misinformation? We're going to examine some of the evidence, the anomalies that defy explanation, some of the scientific theories that attempt to debunk them, and the secrets buried in government archives. So, the scientific versus anomalous evidence. Let's start with one of the most intriguing signals ever detected, the WOW signal of 1977. A 72-second radio burst picked up by Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope, coming from deep space near the constellation Sagittarius. The signal was so strong, so precise, that astronomer Jerry Eman circled the data printout and wrote a single word beside it: wow. The frequency? 1420 megahertz. The natural emission frequency of hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. Some scientists believe this would be the ideal frequency for extraterrestrial civilizations to use for communication, as hydrogen is a universal constant that any advanced species would recognize. But despite decades of searching, the signal has never been detected again. Was it a deliberate transmission? Was it a cosmic anomaly? Or just an unexplained blip in the noises of the universe? Some theories suggest it could have been a passing comet, a military transmission, or even an unknown astrophysical event. But none have been definitively proven. Then there's the possibility that the natural phenomena could explain persistent UFO sightings. Taking flaring magnetars, highly magnetized neutron stars that release intense bursts of X-rays and gamma rays. These flares can appear as sudden, bright flashes in the sky, sometimes resembling structured lights or objects. Magnetars are some of the most extreme objects in the universe, with magnetic fields a quadrillion times stronger than Earth's. When they flare, they can produce fast radio bursts, or FRBs, millisecond long flashes, of radio waves that have puzzled astronomers for years. Some scientists believe that magnetars could be responsible for certain unexplained aerial phenomena, mistaken for UFOs. And what about weather anomalies like atmospheric plasma? Here's my favourite again, ball lightning, and temperature inversions that can create strange visual distortions, making ordinary aircraft appear to hover, change shape, or even disappear. Some UFO sightings may be optical illusions caused by extreme atmospheric conditions rather than extraterrestrial craft. But then there's the other side of the debate, the government secrecy and misinformation surrounding UFOs. What's hidden in declassified military reports? What's buried in the archives we may never see? In 2021, the CIA released thousands of pages of declassified UFO documents, detailing sightings, investigations, and unexplained aerial phenomena. Some reports describe objects moving at impossible speeds, performing maneuvers beyond known physics. I've just ruined that, sorry. Others reveal classified military experiences, suggesting that some UFO sightings may be advanced technology hidden from the public. And then there's the House Oversight Task Force, which in 2025 began pushing for full UAP disclosure, challenging decades of secrecy. Why are some officials denied access to the classified UFO intelligence? What's being withheld? And more importantly, why? Some congressional members have expressed frustration that even those overseeing national security budgets are denied access to UAP-related operations, raising questions about who truly controls UFO intelligence. Are UFO sightings simply classified technology? A distraction? Or are they a hint at something beyond our current understanding? One thing we do know, the phenomenon persists and it exists. The theories will continue to grow, but the biggest question remains, what do you believe? What if the biggest UFO secrets aren't hidden in the sky, but are right here on Earth? Well, that's a wrap for part 1 of You've Got to Be Joking the history, myths, and sightings of UFOs and UAPs. If today's deep dive made you question everything or laugh at the absurdity, be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a comment. But guess what? We're just getting started. Next episode, we're shifting gears from sightings and secrecy to the biggest UFO conspiracies of all time. Government cover-ups, black budget projects, and the stories that refuse to disappear. From leaked documents to whistleblower confessions, we're uncovering the narratives that shaped UFO history and asking the real question: who's controlling what we believe? Join us on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, keep your eyes on the sky and remember, sometimes the biggest mysteries aren't up there, they're right here in front of us.